Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and Twin West Chamber of Commerce, I would like to welcome you to the Candidates Forum this evening. The League of Women Voters is an organization that is nonpartisan and volunteer-based. It is organized in the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While the League of Women Voter members do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The League does encourage its members as individuals, as we encourage each of you to get involved in your community and the political party of your choice. However, the views expressed in this forum are those of the individual candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters. By sponsoring this forum this evening, the League provides an opportunity for citizen participation and exposure to candidates, but does not provide an endorsement of any candidate or candidates. All viable candidates have been invited to participate this evening. Tonight's forum will be for the Hennepin County Commissioner for District 7. In tonight's forum, the candidates will start with 6 of the 7 questions they received in advance, in which they will have 1 minute to respond. Then our candidates will have up to 30 seconds to respond to each of the questions that are coming in and have come via email. Finally, they will be given 1 minute for the final question, that is their final statement. Candidates, the League would like to request that you refrain from making any personal attacks on your fellow candidate. Due to the pandemic, we have no in-person audience for this forum or any others that we will be holding to keep everyone safe. We have been posting email addresses to which questions may be sent. During this live broadcast, your questions may be sent to candidateforums@twinwest.com. Our screeners are here, making sure the questions are viable for all candidates in this forum and not in any way a personal attack toward anyone before getting them to the moderator. I'd like to take a moment to point out that we have our timekeepers for this evening. They will show you when you have 15 seconds to finish your statements, then show you that your time has expired. Please finish your sentence at that time, as I will be directing the next speaker's turn. So the order is going to be in alphabetical order tonight, so we're going to start with Kevin and then Danny. So our first question that we have for you is, please tell us about your background and previous civic involvement that support your candidacy for this position. Kevin?
Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight. I know when I started my campaign about a year ago, I don't think anybody could have imagined that this is how campaigning would look. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up, my mom was a nurse. She met my dad while he was in the service. And I grew up with a sense of service to my community, making sure that our members of our community are being taken care of and that their health was addressed. First 10 years of my life, I grew up in a state park, so conservation of our natural resources were central to my upbringing. Now, I want to bring these kinds of values to the Hennepin County Commissioner to make sure that we're taking care of all of our citizens, making sure that we're protecting our environment, and making strategic investments in our infrastructure and our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you all for being here, and thanks to the League for putting this on. I grew up in the western suburbs. My family still lives here, and we've been here for quite a long time. My background for the past 20 years, I've been working in public service. I was a city administrator in the last township in Hennepin County. From there, I went to the legislature, and I did research for the Minnesota House. After that, I was at the Minnesota Department of Commerce, and I actually I was a program manager in the state energy office, and for the past 10 years, I've served at Hennepin County. Hennepin our job at the county is to alleviate suffering, and our job is not It's not sexy very often, but it's so important. And it's going to take strong leaders with experience in order to move us out of this current crisis that we're in regarding COVID, with the divisiveness of our country and the divisiveness of our county. So I appreciate being here. I look forward to talking about the issues of the county tonight.
Thank you. And Danny, this is yours also. What do you see as the county's essential services? In your opinion, what are the county's top priorities?
I think that there's one, and I think that we can have debates on whether or not, for example, affordable housing is more important than child protection, but our job is, we have one job, and that's to, I mentioned it before, it's to alleviate suffering of county-involved individuals. And if you look at the budget that we have, you know, our priority has to do it efficiently. I mean, for 40-50% of our budget, of the whole $2.5 billion budget, is for health and human services. And so, obviously, that's our priority. But we also spend an enormous amount of money, $462 million, on operations, which is basically county overhead. And I think that there's a way that we can basically modify a lot of those dollars to make sure that our investments that we're collecting from people and we're spending to make families better off are focused on those direct recipients than we are on our overhead.
Thank you. Kevin?
So I think the primary duties of the county, kind of like Danny said, is making sure that we're addressing the needs of the citizens of Hennepin County, making sure that we're making smart investments in our roads and bridges, making sure that we're addressing the health and human services, and providing those resources that are critical for our health and well-being throughout the county. I also think it's essential that we're paying attention to the environment, addressing climate change, and making sure that we're in a position to invest in not only our people but our businesses, and making sure that we're able to continue the structure of thriving that Hennepin County is known for. We're the most populous county in Minnesota, and with that kind of economy, we have to make sure that we're good stewards of the resources we have. So I'm committed to making sure that we're making smart investments in our infrastructure, making sure that we're providing resources smartly to our citizens to address mental health needs, and providing our care for our environment.
Thank you. And this is for you again. Hennepin County's 2020 budget is $2.5 billion, the second largest government budget in the state, behind the state of Minnesota budget. Do you support increasing or reducing the budget? Explain your answer.
So I think our budget is really a moral document. It is guiding us where we should be putting our resources and telling us how we want to administer and take care of our people. So to try to say that we are going to increase or decrease a budget and provide a specific number doesn't get into the character that I think the budget really is about. I think in the upcoming years, we're going to have to face some very real challenges with our budget. So we're going to have to make sure that we're careful stewards of our money. I support the decision to not raise property taxes in the upcoming fiscal year. And I think that we can make sure that we are taking care of people in a way that's responsible, but then moving forward to make smart investments in our community so that all of our people are taken care of moving into the future.
Thank you. Danny?
Hennepin's budget is $2.5 billion. It's a significant budget. I don't agree that a budget is a moral document. I think that budgeting requires the courage of common sense, because there's people paying for that budget. And I think that as elected officials, it is incumbent on us to make sure that every service that we deliver is evaluated, to make sure that we're reaching those people that we're supposed to be serving. I believe that it's incumbent on the elected body to be a policy board and to set that stage and to set a budget according to what they want to serve, but we have to be efficient in the way that we deliver those service. And especially now, we're going to continue to have a massive demand for government expenditures, and we're going to have unprecedented funding shortfalls. So now more than ever, it's important that we stop have feelings about a budget, and we basically make sure that it's a solid fiscal document.
Thank you. And Kevin, unmanaged invasive species is a growing concern in city and county public. Didn't you answer that one?
It's actually Danny's turn.
Sorry.
It's okay. What was the question? What was the
You
question?
both get to answer it.
Yeah.
Okay, unmanaged invasive species is a growing concern in our city and public and private lands. What kind of programs would you support to help control these invasive species in our county?
Okay, that's a really good question. One of the things that hopefully we'll be able to talk about tonight is the role of the county, but specifically because every government entity has a different role in aquatic invasives, and it truly is a state issue. And how do we buy in? How do we get 87 counties and 835 cities and 1,700 townships to buy into the idea that we need to stop aquatic invasive? But to the question specifically, my thing is we need to reduce the exposure. We need to monitor where they are and how they're moving. We need to document where we're actually making some changes in water quality or invasive concentrations. And then the most important thing that I think that the county can do is actually spread the word and engage with our public affairs department and our environmental services department to make sure that people are aware of how this is all happening, measuring water quality to make sure that we're achieving the goals and getting people to participate in the process.
Okay, Kevin.
So I think this kind of comes back to my upbringing. I grew up in a state park. My dad was a park manager. And we learned very early on that you have to take deliberate steps to make sure that you control prairie land, that you control aquatic species, and that you monitor and make sure that you have everybody working together to everybody play their part in controlling these species. So I know that we have buckthorn that's coming through, and this is the season to be clearing it out. I think we can be focusing some of our attention, especially in this time of year, in clearing out that particular invasive species. And then we can further work on our grant program that we have to allow for private businesses and private organizations to be involved and be a part of that solution for our aquatic species.
Thank you. Do you agree with the county's declaration of racism is a public health emergency? Why or why not?
Yes, I do agree with that statement. And if I could, I'm just going to tell a really quick story. I promise. So a man was walking down the river, alongside a river, and he saw a small child struggling in the river, about to drown. So he called out to a nearby village and said, "Somebody come and help." And so the villagers came out and they helped rescue this child. And as they were rescuing a child, another child came floating down the river struggling, and another and another. And so the whole village organized and got ready to rescue these children who were in the river. And it was at that point that the man walked along and said, "I need to go upriver and find out why these kids are falling in the river and stop that." I think this is that type of situation where we're saying, this is our moment to walk up the river and find out what our root causes is of the systemic racism that exists.
Thank you.
I actually wrote an op-ed, and it's on my website. And when this issue came before the board, and I would have voted yes that it was a public health emergency, There's a lot of despair in this situation, though. We can declare an emergency or a public health crisis, but if we don't do anything, I mean, if our actions don't actually start to change the disparities in our education system, in our teen pregnancy rates for people of color, in our four-year graduation rates, in the violent streets, in the unsafe neighborhoods, if we don't do something other than declare that there's a health emergency, what good is it? So I think that the focus, I mean, it's a great first step, and it's a good public declaration that hopefully will set the stage for us to start solving the problems that we've had in this metro for decades. And this is not new to us. So I'm really looking forward to working on this issue moving forward.
Thank you. And this is our final 1-minute question. Hennepin County is home to many businesses of all sizes. Many of these businesses have been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. What can the county do to help bring these businesses back?
That's me.
Yep.
So I think a lot of these businesses aren't going to be back, unfortunately. And that's going to be a real challenge, both for our long-term funding problems and for those individual businesses today. We got $221 million of Federal CARES Act dollars. $200 million of that has already been appropriated. 25% of that went to small businesses and emergency rental. But how do we help businesses? And we start helping businesses by reducing the rigor and regulations that it is to start a business. We lower our tax burden on businesses in Minnesota. And currently, if Hennepin County and every school district and every municipality decides to keep their budget flat, our estimated market value is going to increase by 5.4%, which is going to give every individual business, for the most part, unless they've made some changes within their business itself, they're going to see a reduction. That's going to help. And we need to make sure that we bring businesses to the table and we listen to the needs that they have rather than trying to create programs that we think they need.
Thank you.
So I think what we're seeing is a failure from the very top of our country all the way down to the bottom here. We, by not addressing the pandemic, have forced our businesses and everybody in the county to suffer through the worst pandemic that the world has seen in 100 years. And we need to make sure that we have a strong national strategy to address it, and then have the counties work with our businesses to make sure that they have the resources they need to get to the next step. So we have aid programs, and very often they're complex and they don't have the resources to administer those aid programs to small business efficiently. So we need to make sure that we are providing that assistance to small business so they can navigate these uncharted waters.
Thank you. Do you support reduced funding for county law enforcement and reallocating those funds to other areas of the county government? What specific reductions would you take, if any?
To me?
Yep.
No. That's easy. I don't support reducing our law enforcement budget. I think that we need to make sure that we're working smarter with our money. But my brother's in law enforcement, and I will never support a policy that puts people like my brother, who put their life on the line, to make a political point or something like that. I mean, that's not something I'm going to do.
Thank you. Danny?
No.
Okay. Are there additional laws you want to see enacted to restrict police in their use of force against citizens? Danny?
Additional what? Restrictions?
Yes.
That's kind of a vague question, but I would say, law enforcement right now, I would submit, is being blamed for every social injustice that exists out there today. And I don't think that's, number one, fair. I think it's nonsense and it's unsafe. From this district right here, I can't tell you how many people are fearful to go downtown, even right now. And so I think that we have to transform, and I think it has to be driven by not citizens, but by coalitions of people, including law enforcement, to transform the way that we address law enforcement. But restrictions, according to that question, absolutely no.
Thank you.
I think that we can probably make sure that we are applying use of force correctly and make sure that we have adequate training so that we don't have people dying at the hands of police officers. I've had conversations with people across the district who, regardless of if they're black, brown, white, they want to live in a safe community, and they want to know that at the end of any encounter with law enforcement, that everybody is alive. And that's what I think our goal should be.
Thank you. What action should the county take to address the racial disparities in health and housing? Provide specific examples of what you would like to see done.
In 30 seconds. So I think that first we need to be building coalitions and collaborating with the communities who are most impacted by the housing disparities that we see, and making sure that they have a seat at the table when making decisions on how we are going to implement changes to our housing policy. So by making sure that we include people who are most affected, and then partnering with our developers and our cities, we can build better policies that address these needs.
Thank you.
Can you read the question one more time?
Sure. What action should the county take to address racial disparities in health and housing?
Okay. So again, you have to look at the role of the county. What is the role of the county in providing housing? And so we're a funder. That's what we do. We don't build houses. Nonprofit community development organizations build houses. Nonprofits provide supportive services. I think there is a huge role for the county to play in bringing the people together, and it's not about inviting people of color and people in poverty to the county's table to say, how do these programs fit your needs? It's about us asking them to sit at their table to find out exactly what their needs are. It has to reverse. We have to turn this thing around.
Would you support the requirement to construct new multi-unit and single-family homes in the county according to universal design requirements?
I guess I'm not sure what universal design requirements they're alluding to.
I would think wheelchair accessible.
Oh. If that's it, I don't think I would. I think that our housing and development, it has to be, it's not a one size fits all, and I don't think it even is now. I think we create an enormous amount of, we fund an enormous amount of lifestyle housing across the county, and I think that we need to bolster that. If a need arises where we need more youth housing, we need more disabled housing, well then for sure, obviously we need to build those units.
So I think that we can probably do a better job of making sure that we have the variable housing that we need. And I think, like you said, I don't think one size fits all for our housing needs. It's not going to be the same housing needs in St. Bonifacius as it is in Maple Grove. And so we need to be aware of the differences and making sure that we're planning appropriately and that we are working with our cities to implement these.
Thank you. Do you support county aid be provided for the rebuilding of South Minneapolis businesses that were destroyed during the riots in May?
Yeah, I think that the county plays an important part in making sure that we are bringing things back and making sure that we have a community that is whole again. So yeah, the county should play a part in partnering with Minneapolis to bring businesses back, and because this isn't specifically just Minneapolis. I was talking to somebody in Maple Grove that was impacted by this. So it impacts across the county.
Thank you.
It would take a robust discussion to get me to even begin to think about that. From a standpoint, if you take this district, District 7, we already are disproportionately affected by the money that we contribute versus what comes back to this district. So to increase the taxes in this district to rebuild what I would consider to be a failure of the mayor's part in Minneapolis, without trying to be too aggressive there, I would have to have a big discussion before I would consider that.
Okay, thank you. And for our final question, in summary, how do you intend to best serve your district and move the county forward?
That's me.
Yes, that's
All right. So thank you for letting me be here again. I got into this race a number of years, a couple of years, it seems like years ago with COVID, but a number of months ago, and I didn't necessarily, I've worked in government for quite a while. I've never necessarily wanted the mic, but I've always wanted the ball because I'm a policy guy and I want to make changes. And I want to make sure that the changes we make are built on relationships, they're built on listening to the needs of the constituents, they're equitable, they're fair. And right now, what I see is a very metro-centric county, and it's been that way for a number of years. And Hennepin, like so many metro regions across the country, has been dominated by one political bloc, one ideology for decades. And these areas have the highest rates of inequality, they have the highest rates of poverty, and we need to address those. We need to address those things. And I know that we do that when we find good leaders to stand up there, build those relationships, convince people that the investments that we can make are going to be beneficial to the families. And that's why I'm running for Hennepin County Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for hosting this forum. And thank you, Danny, for running and being a part of this. I got into this race because, in large part because of the disparities in our investments in our infrastructure, particularly in the western suburbs in District 7. We get about 1/10 of the funding that the next lowest funded district gets in transportation funding alone. There was just an article in the Min Post today that we agreed on that disparity. The difference is you've had 10 years to work on that disparity, and nothing's changed. I think that it's time that we have a new voice, one that's dedicated to working across the aisle, making sure that we can work with the other commissioners and get things done on behalf of our district. I'm proud of the endorsements that I've received, and I'm willing to step up and work for everybody of Hennepin County District 7.
Thank you. Once again, on behalf of the League of Women Voters and the Twin West Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank the candidates for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. I would also like to thank the voters for viewing and participating by submitting excellent questions. Also, I would really like to thank our friends at CCX Media for their continued support of League of Women Voters and our shared mission to provide nonpartisan forums for voters to get to know people who wish to represent them. Remember that we could not get to, if we did not get to your question, or if you have further questions for these candidates, we invite you to contact them directly with your concerns. Information about your candidates can also be found on vote411.org. Please remember to get out and vote on or before November 3rd, as your vote truly counts. Thank you, have a good evening, and be safe.